We're now going to focus at a high level on individual change models. These are models for how people change. Always keep in mind that organizations do not change. People collectively decide to change. Therefore, if you're doing any change project, it's really mandatory that you understand the dynamics that people go through in how they progress and understand change, and therefore build that into the change project. Therefore, the individual change models are a critical part of a project framework itself. And this is a critical part that too often people think that they know about and otherwise ignore. And many of the reasons for resistance comes from a lack of understanding of these change models. Going forward then, there's 6 different models in this category, and I'm going to focus on a couple of them at a high level because these can be very detailed in application, and I have a separate course just on individual change. So let's take a look at one of the most popular and really the first, which was the LEWIN model. This is the one that people understand of unfreeze, change, and refreeze. There, you understand the LEWIN model. However, the implementation of that really requires work that Ed Schein did from his learning theory, the learning process. This is a understanding of change as learning, and the unfreezing is really recognizing that what you've learned before is no longer adequate. You have to relearn something different and then lock that new learning into your mental models going forward. So again, this is a very simple 3-phase model, but it is satisfactory, but not near sufficient if you really want to do a good job. ADCAR. This is a proprietary model designed by ProSci. It's a 5-stage model. The ADCAR stands for awareness, desire, knowledge, ability, and reinforcement. This was mentioned earlier as some people using it as a project, but again, as a project, ADCAR is inadequate because it's really designed to illustrate the 5 stages that people go through in change, from awareness to maintenance or reinforcement. But again, this is a proprietary model, and a lot of the details are hidden from the public and only available to ProSci certified change consultants. Going forward then, as an alternative to ADCAR, my recommendation is the Stages of Change model, also known as a trans-theoretical model. This is a 5-stage model that really is almost an exact duplicate of ADCAR, slightly different wording, but the advantage is that it is open source and has 10 different change processes that match 2-stage transitions. So if you're trying to gain awareness, it tells you which change processes to use to gain awareness. Similarly, if you've got awareness established but you need a decision balance to move forward, there's separate change processes that map to that transition. So it's very, very operational in that way. Let's take a look then at the trans-theoretical or change model itself, or the stages of change model. This is really from the psychology, and it came out of the healthcare industry, in particular healthcare, weight loss, alcoholism, and addiction. And it looks at 18 different psychological and behavioral models and collectively integrated those 18 models into a single model of individual change. It's got 5 stages. First, pre-contemplation. This is really benign ignorance of the problem. They are totally unaware that a problem exists. You cannot expect someone to change if they're not aware that something is in need of change. Pre-contemplation. Contemplation is that they're now aware, they've got a basic awareness that a problem exists, but no change decision has yet been made. They're thinking about the change. They don't have a balance yet of cost versus benefit to really make that decision. So again, if you expect somebody to change, they're not going to change in this stage because they don't see the personal benefit of change. Preparation. Too often change leaders start with preparation when they initiate a project. They've already gone through as a team the understanding and what needs to change, and they're ready to have people prepare for the change, the training aspect, the trial preparation. People take time in this category, but this is the default starting point, and many times when you look at resistance, it's because people are starting in preparing people for the change when they're in reality at one of the earlier stages, unaware of the problem or not yet committed to making or even trying the change. Behavioral change won't happen until the earlier two stages are accomplished. Then the preparation, learning to know how to do that change, is a third stage. Fourth stage is trial. You're taking action. You're starting to do the change, but backsliding or failure at this point is to be expected. This is a critical part of the stages of change model, in that perfection is not expected when people go into action. The key here is the trigger for past behavior. We have many different triggers that causes us to behave in certain ways, and it is impossible to previously identify all of those prior to kicking off a change initiative. Some can be addressed in planning and preparation, but when things get chaotic or under pressure, which happens oftentimes, what happens is people default to past behavior. This is expected. The key part of the stages of change model is recognizing that these triggers for past behavior exist, and as each failure or backslide occurs, that's yet one more learning of how to basically prepare properly for action. So again, the key part here is trial with some expectation of failure. Accept that failure, use it as a learning, and move forward again for new trial. Fifth then is the maintenance. This is the establishment of new habits. The old habits are gone. The past triggers for previous action and behavior have been removed or identified, but even in the maintenance stage, you may not have identified all past triggers. During times of true chaos or things are chaotic, out of control, and you're going back to your diagnostic model in the chaos area, people are likely to revert to old behaviors because they're going back to things that they felt comfortable with in the past. The maintenance then is a recognition that no matter how long the new habit has been in place, remnants of the old habit may be lurking in the background. Again, normal, not to be unexpected. Deal with them as it comes up. Going forward then, there's also 10 change processes that map to individual stages of change. This is a critical part, and I've identified those in a downloadable document associated with this lecture. Moving forward then, let's compare ADCAR to stages of change because they are very similar. These are the 5 stages in the ADCAR model relative to the similarity in the stages of change. So awareness is basically the same. Desire is your decision, balance, or more formally, contemplation. Gaining knowledge versus preparing for the change. Being able to change versus action. A little difference there, but not much. Reinforcement of the change, maintenance of the change. So you can see the similarities here, and that's why I recommend the stages of change model, because it is open source. Making this even more operational though, let's talk about what these really mean. Awareness then is, they're clueless, they don't know. Decision balance is, well, maybe, but they're not yet decided. Preparation is getting ready. Action is, let's try. It's not necessary we're going to do it properly, but let's at least try. And maintenance, again, is the new habits. So this puts the stages of change into terminology that is easily understood and communicated to others. Which model should you use? Again, you only need to use one because they're mutually exclusive. It's interesting to know the different models, but only one is necessary here. Totally unlike diagnostic models, where each one looks at the organization differently. In this case, the process that people go through for change, one version is sufficient. My recommendation then is not to use LEWIN Shine because it is somewhat limited. The Shine 8 learning processes are very limited in their focus as to that middle stage. And again, you've only got 3 stages versus 5. The ADCAR, proprietary, so again, move to the stages of change as my recommendation. Similar to ADCAR, but open source. And the change processes that are hidden within the ProSci proprietary information are open source and easily used in mapping to stage transition, particularly when you're doing change planning and, even more important, change communication. The key here is communicate at the stage where people are. The stage where they are is not necessarily where the change leadership team would like them to be. Going forward then, organizations do not change. People collectively decide to change. Knowing the stages that people go through in that change process is essential to properly execute and implement a change initiative.